Chilling tales for dark nights.
Want to make sure you never miss a Chilling Tales for Dark Nights video again? Be sure to subscribe and hit that bell to turn on notifications.
Hey guys, this game I've been playing has an endless amount of content, PvE, PvP, and is constantly adding new challenges and characters. Just recently, they had Asgardians like Loki and Thor join the game, and even some characters from the dark world of Alice in Wonderland. My only question is, why aren't you playing with me? Let's remedy that. Use my link in the description to download the game and receive the best start possible. Also, make sure to use my exclusive promo code RAIDPC1 to receive additional resources for your journey. Join Raid and millions of players today. Thanks Raid Shadow Legends for sponsoring this program. Hey amigos, you know what's really easy to do and even easier to forget? Please help me out and hit that like button if you're listening on YouTube. And if you're listening somewhere else, what the hell? Pop in, give me a thumb. Say hello while you're at it. It helps me a ton with the algorithm, and besides, it's real nice to see you there. And now, on to the show. Oh, shit. Hey, welcome my friend. Would you believe this is the Season 8 finale already? You know, it feels just like yesterday I read you Plastic Jesus on my cell phone, Evil Idol fell apart, and I magically had a show all of a sudden. Wild times. That's right, Chester, and you became the world's most famous alligator. Alligator sound effect anyway. Well, come on in, friend, and let's get started. All right. And as always, check out simplyscarypodcast.com. For $7.99 a month, you get the entire catalog ad-free and downloadable and streamable. Just hit the patrons button and you're off to the races. Got some more money you want to throw around? Hey, check out patreon.com/DrewBlood and become my patron. Help support this crazy ride. Alright, so tonight we welcome back our good pal Rory Dwane for the last installment of his series, The Death Patrol. In the first one, we met Detective Sergeant Hank Jones and his partner Saul in the Nameless City, an afterlife realm where souls continue on after death. In the next, Hank and his new partner Creed tracked a thief to hell, where they found Saul had been Hank's enemy all along. And tonight we rejoin Hank 3 years later. Hank, now a broken alcoholic haunted by betrayal, investigates a new threat involving his former nemesis, the chemist. But this one will force him to confront the most devastating truth of all, one that will either destroy him completely or offer him a chance at redemption. So without further delay, from author Rory Dwane, I give you The Death Patrol, End of Watch. The cockroach spun around at the bottom of the bottle. Hank lifted the whiskey to his lips and sighed as the burning liquid sank down into his rotted gut. Finishing the bottle, he chewed on the cockroach, staring out over the Nameless City. His phone buzzed, and answering it, static droned through the airwaves, but leveled out and his partner's drawling tone spoke through the receiver. "You still alive, compadre?" Creed Cassidy said. "Kinda." "You know we're on the rounds tonight." "You remind me of my third wife, Creed. She was always stating the obvious, too." "I'm outside your apartment building. Haul your ass down here. We need to get on the beat." Hank sighed once more and hung up the phone. It had been a year since the day they had traversed into hell and found Hank's old partner in crime still alive, kind of. He had been ruling the nether realms and the underworld of the Nameless City under the alias The Weaver, and Hank had felt he had lost a part of himself that day. A darkness grew within him, like some silent intruder, but the Nameless City still needed him. So putting down the empty bottle, Hank hauled ass and met Creed outside in their car. "Whoo-wee, you smell like a goddamn brewery, partner."
Now you sound like my second wife. Hit the gas and let's see what this city's got in store for us tonight.
Onwards they drove through the Nameless City, the boulevards and pavements now mere puddles from the raging storm overhead, which had been showering the city's unfortunates for 3 days. Life on the firing line had never been one of idleness, and that went twofold tonight, for the city's ghouls and goblins were out in unison. They pulled into a side alley, and the miscreants scattered at the sight of the blue and red lights flashing. Hank filed out after Creed, who was much fitter than he, due to the man not drinking himself to oblivion on the nightly. Creed caught one of the miscreants by the collar and dragged him back to the patrol car.
And who do we owe the pleasure of speaking to?
Hank checked the miscreant's pockets, and sure as shit there was a vial of stoppered souls in there.
Oh, it seems someone has been a naughty boy. Where'd you get this?
"Fuck yourselves,"
growled the ghoul, sharp teeth flaring in the light. Creed punched the kid in the gut, folding him up like a bag of shit.
"Holy hell, all right. Got it at the cleaver."
Bullshit.
"No bullshit. Bella's been floating the bar with all kinds of goodies."
Hank looked closer at the ghoul.
I know you.
"No,
You sure I never knocked you around before?
I'd remember."
Creed punched the ghoul in the gut for a second time.
No talk back. Let 'em loose.
Hank said, slipping the vial of stoppered souls into his pocket.
We've all we want from him.
Creed cut the ghoul loose, who turned and fled into the dark alley. Back inside the car, Creed shut out the rain. "Where to, partner?"
Guess we'd better pay our old friend Bella a visit.
And so it was. They sped on through the Nameless City, destined for the cleaver. The line outside the nightclub went up and around the corner, and it was no doubt in anyone's minds that the sight of the city's two best detectives spelled trouble, for a few ghouls turned and strode away at the sight of the duo. Hank flashed the doorman his badge and didn't wait for a response, pushing his way through the double doors and into the gloomy interior that was the city's best nightclub. Hank found Bella cleaning glasses behind the bar. She flashed him a smile and then slid a glass onto the counter, pouring Hank a measure.
Can't tonight, Toots. On business.
Hank surveyed the room, which was jam-packed with all sorts of devilish figures, robes, masks, bestial assortments, you name it. The clientele who partied at the Cleaver was prone to all sorts of dark pastimes.
"Never knew you'd have turned down a drink, Hank."
Bella smiled wider.
"You getting old, old man?"
About as old as a turkey's ass.
Hank looked back at Bella.
You recognize these?
He slid the vial of stoppered souls out onto the counter.
"Can't say I do."
Her smile withered like grapevines in winter.
Guess that's funny.
Hank turned the vial sideways.
Seeing as it has the Cleaver's logo on it. Start talking,
growled Creed from behind Hank.
"What you guys want to know?"
sighed Bella.
You making this shit yourselves?
Bella's hand disappeared from sight, and Hank had the momentary awareness to duck down behind the counter as gunshots ripped through the nightclub. Hank drew his revolver and glanced back to see Creed holding his arm, with blood pooling down the outside, just a graze, thankfully. Creed had his six-shooter out and trained it over the bar, but footsteps sounded on the other side. Looking over the counter, Hank just saw the back of Bella's head, as she dived into a safe room and shut the door behind her. Movement in the crowd drew Hank's gaze, seeing masked men appear from the press of dancing figures who had either not heard the gunshots or didn't care. Hank aimed and blasted the front runner through the chest. Creed let off 3 shots, each one finding a mark among the press. 4 down, the rest turned and scattered.
And just what the hell happened?
Growled Creed. Hank stepped up to the ghoul he had taken down and pointed at the tattoo behind his ear. The Cleaver's logo was branded onto each gunman, it turned out, on one's wrist, another's neck.
What the hell does this mean?
Asked Creed.
Turns out our beloved Bella's a player for Stoppered Souls after all.
Hank went behind the bar, Creed in tow. They found Bella's lifeless body crumpled up behind the dumpster in the alleyway out back, an enchanted dagger protruding from her heart.
Double dead.
Hank spat onto her corpse. It seemed that the real culprit behind the Stoppered Souls had gotten away. Back at the precinct, the chief ripped them a new one.
Shooting in the civilian zone is a goddamn liability. You want the council on my ass?
Shouted the chief.
Council can go to hell for all I care,
Hank growled back.
We found more Stoppered Souls in the back room.
The chief thawed somewhat.
So they were brewing it in-house?
Looks that way, Creed chimed in. The chief nodded.
Right. You let me deal with the council. Good work, boys. Just try not to shoot up any more nightclubs. Got it?
Sure thing. Hank filed out of the precinct with Creed behind him. Where to now?
Is the Wire still around?
Wire was an old informant from back in the days when Saul still roamed the underworld. He'd been quiet for some time, so Hank thought the man was either double dead or turned rogue. I can put a word on the street, see if he turns up. Hank nodded.
Get it done.
Wire was an old dog, but that thing about you can't teach old dog new tricks was horseshit, because Hank never met a more slippery son of a bitch. They parked the car outside the warehouse and buzzed the buzzer on the door.
Who is he?
The old man's voice rasped through the buzzer. Who do you think it is, old man? Open up before I get pneumonia. Creed huddled into his overcoat, the rain pelting down hard. The door buzzed and they let themselves in. They found Wire doing what he did best, which was tinkering with anything electrical, as that's where he earned his name. And there wasn't a contraption with wires that Wire couldn't fix.
I thought you were dead.
Wire shot at Hank. Ain't we all dead? Creed shot back, making the old-timer smile.
Guess we is. I guess we is. Didn't come here to write love letters, Wire.
Hank broke into their sentiments.
Guess not. Guess you both want to know how Bella got a hand on them Stoppered Souls.
Now you're talking, Creed said, folding his arms.
What's your price?
Hank asked, knowing nothing in the Nameless City was free.
Guess I could do with one of those jammers in your precinct. Done. That all?
Wire bit his lip.
And a couple of remote detonators. And don't ask what for, as I ain't telling. Wouldn't dream of it, compadre.
Hank looked closer at the instrument cradled in Wire's hands.
Holy shit, is that what I think it is? A trillium bomb.
Wire nodded happily. Holy fucking hell. Creed took 2 steps back. You blow us all to smithereens. Wire let out a chuckle.
About Bella's killer,
Hank said.
Right. Guess I might know of a name. And that would be? Calls himself the Chemist.
Wire shuddered. And where can we find this chemist? Asked Creed. Wire shrugged.
Don't know. That's your job, ain't it?
Hank sighed. Guess so. Thanks, Wire.
Hey, well, what about my doodads?
You'll get your shit when we nail this son of a bitch. Creed tossed over his shoulder. They made their way outside. You think he's telling the truth? Hank laughed.
This is the Nameless City, partner. Ain't no one showing their cards.
Creed nodded. They put out an APB on the chemist. With no name or whereabouts, it was a shot in the dark, but Hank's pa used to always say that a shot in the dark was worth two in the light. So there it was. After an hour, a name popped up of the chemist's known accomplices, and Snake was a well-known ghoul in the Nameless City, responsible for human trafficking and all other types of nefarious acts of violence. A suspected location came in on the APB, so they fired up the lights and siren and drove on through the storm, headed for the northern sector of the Nameless City, to a stronghold of ghouls located in a tenement building. They pulled up around the corner from the tenement, and glancing around the building, they saw two ghouls toting sawed-off shotguns stood outside. It was go time. Hank drew his revolver, and Creed followed with his, and they crept along the pavement, coming to a dumpster. Hank cocked back his revolver.
We don't want to have to kill you fools,
Hank shouted over the dumpster. Shotgun blasts hit the side of the dumpster as the two ghouls unloaded on them. Creed smiled. Guess this means business.
Guess it does.
Hank aimed around the side of the dumpster and let off a shot, catching the nearer ghoul in the chest. The other ghoul tossed his shotgun and turned to run, but Creed stood out and took aim, his bullet catching the runner in the leg.
Good shot, partner.
Hank nodded as they followed around the dumpster and approached the crawling ghoul.
You guys know what the fuck you just done?
The ghoul hissed. Yeah, said Creed, sticking the barrel of his six-shooter into the ghoul's face. Caught a nice big juicy fish. Now you gonna talk, or do I need to finish you off?
All right.
The ghoul glanced past him.
Snake's inside, but I guess you knew that.
Creed pulled down on the trigger, opening the ghoul's brains to the rain. They reloaded.
Sure as shit they heard the shots.
Wanna call backup? Hank shook his head.
No. Just means we gotta be careful. Follow me.
They entered the tenement. Up the stairs, a ghoul let off a shot from behind the vending machine, and Creed took aim, waiting for the fucker to stick his head around. And when the ghoul showed his ugly face, Creed put a bullet in it. They moved on. Up the stairs, they came to a corridor. The third door on the left had a picture of a snake on it. Guess he marks his territory, Creed said, looking at the painting.
Fools never learn.
Hank readied himself for the task. Looking at Creed, he gave his partner a nod, and Hank kicked open the door.
You boys fucked around with the wrong guy,
a voice called from deep inside the apartment. Why don't you come on out and play nice?
Why don't you kiss my green ass?
Bullets ripped through the wall then, and Hank dove to one side of the hallway, Creed to another. The machine gun stopped after a minute. Hank stood, glancing around the corner, and the ghoul was visible at the end of the hallway. Creed was on the other side of the hallway, hidden from view. Hank took aim and let off a shot, catching the ghoul in the shoulder. Blood sprayed back onto the wall. Creed appeared from the bedroom. Hank nodded.
Fuckers never think about the reload time.
Hank approached the ghoul, and a large tattoo on his neck of a snake betrayed his identity.
Snake?
Hank stood on the ghoul's shoulder, making more blood gush out of the bullet hole.
Fuck! Okay, you got me,
cried Snake.
We ain't even started,
growled Hank, shoving his gun into the ghoul's face.
How about I give you another hole to breathe through? What do you guys want, huh? Drugs? Money? I can give you both.
Snake smiled, and Hank had to give him credit for it.
How about the whereabouts of your accomplice, the chemist?
Snake's smile vanished.
Oh, you guys want to know where the cook is, huh? Well, I wouldn't tell you even if I knew.
Hank leaned down on the ghoul's shoulder, making a moan in agony.
You'll tell us what we want to know whether you want to or not.
Hank nodded to Creed, who lifted Snake off the ground. They put Snake on a chair in the kitchen and tied him to it. Hank went to the kitchen sink and opened the counter beneath the sink, looking through the oddments. He found a bottle of sulfuric acid.
This will make you talk and then some,
Hank said, opening the bottle.
You wouldn't.
Snake had fear in his eyes.
He would.
Creed had anger in his. Hank tilted the bottle, letting drops spill out onto the bullet hole. The acid bit into the flesh, sizzling away, and Snake screamed.
Where's the chemist?
Creed barked into Snake's face.
Fuck you,
snarled Snake. Hank dripped more onto the ghoul's shoulder, and the smell of burning flesh filled the room.
Oh, you'll tell us, Snake. I'll melt your sorry ass away to nothing but bones.
Snake stared up into Hank's eyes, and that darkness that had inhabited his heart for the past year seemed to seep from him and into Snake as he swallowed a lump in his throat and nodded.
Fine, but you guys gotta put one in my head, 'cause if the chemist gets his hands on me, I'll be wishing you had melted me.
Hank nodded.
Deal. The chemist is holed up in a shack in the Lonely Mountain.
Snake took a deep breath.
He has an army behind him, so you guys better get some serious firepower before you go up there.
Hank smiled.
That wasn't so hard, was it?
He lifted the bottle.
Wait, I told you guys what...
Hank poured the bottle until it was empty, then turned and walked away, leaving the melting ghoul strapped to the chair. Creed kept throwing glances in the car, so Hank turned into a side alley and switched off the ignition.
You got something you want to say, partner?
You've changed. Creed looked sidelong at Hank. This past year, you haven't been the same.
We all change, partner. This city takes its effect on you until there's nothing left inside you but an empty husk. Even that is corroded, until what was once a soul is nothing but empty space.
Creed swallowed loudly.
Look, I ain't been on the beat as long as you. Hell, no one has.
Creed put his hand on Hank's shoulder.
But you gotta fight that darkness, friend. With tooth and nail, you gotta go kicking and screaming into the night. You talk like I'm dying.
Hank tried to smile, but it didn't feel right on his face.
Ain't we all dying, in a way? Huh, I guess so.
They pulled into the precinct. The chief was wearing a dark frown on his face as he waved them into his office.
I thought I told you not to shoot up any more public domains. I guess we ain't good at listening, Chief.
Hank smirked.
You're getting too big for your boots, Hank.
The chief grimaced.
Tell me you got something.
We got something, and then some, Creed smiled.
Turns out this chemist is holed up in Lonely Mountain.
Hank sat back in the chair.
Lonely Mountain, huh? Well, that's just great. How do we find one ghoul in that backwater shithole?
Hank stood.
Leave it to us.
They drove northwest, coming to and speeding around Devil's Bend. Once atop Lonely Mountain, a shack sat back against the cliffside, huddled from the wind hissing up from the valley below. Creed got out of the car first. Hank followed. They were 10 paces away from the front door when a blast drove Hank from his feet. He hit the floor and rolled, the world rolling with it. Looking up, flames engulfed the shack, and figures approached from behind the burning building. Hank reached for his revolver, but a ghoul put his foot on Hank's arm, stopping him.
Guess you thought it would be that easy,
A voice called. A figure approached him, and Hank noted the chemical gown and goggles on his head.
The chemist, I presume?
The chemist smiled, revealing long, sharp teeth.
Get these boys in the van, sharpish.
Hank and an unconscious Creed were trussed up and hauled into the back of a van. The doors shut, leaving Hank in darkness. Hank did what he hadn't done in a long time. He prayed. They pulled to a stop and the doors opened. 2 ghouls unloaded them from the van, and Hank only had a moment to look around and try to get his whereabouts. They were somewhere in the Nameless City, but nothing but empty warehouses surrounded them. Things didn't look good, and went from bad to worse pretty quickly as they were dragged into the back of a large warehouse, where ghouls were dissolving fresh meat in vats of acid. The ghouls placed Hank and Creed onto 2 chairs and strapped them up. Hank noted 8 ghouls since entering, with who knows how many more waiting nearby. Things didn't look good, he had to admit. Creed moaned as he came to, looking around.
Where the fuck are we?
You're in my domain,
called the chemist, entering the warehouse.
And you'd do well to remember that.
Fuck yourself,
spat Creed. Hank grimaced as a ghoul stuck a gun to Creed's knee and let off a shot. Creed screamed.
My.
The chemist approached Hank.
The untouchables, huh?
Guess you know who we are. So what do you want with us?
Perhaps I only want to watch you both die. Slowly. Or perhaps I do want something from you both.
The chemist nodded.
Perhaps.
Then spit it out, and don't be wasting my time.
You always were one quick to anger, Hank.
The chemist smiled.
Do you not recognize me?
Why would I recognize a scumbag like you?
Well, it's been some time, yes, but it will come to you.
The chemist paced in front of them.
How do you think I've gone unnoticed all this time, huh? How do you think I've ran this city for decades under the nose of the city's most notorious hunter of ghouls?
You're just gonna bore me to death with your natter, is that it?
Laughed Hank. A ghoul stepped up and punched Hank across the face. Hank spit a tooth.
You hit like a fucking girl.
I must admit, I have changed since you last saw me.
The chemist stopped in front of Hank.
Don't you remember me, Father?
Hank frowned.
What?
Yes, I thought you wouldn't remember, as I had wiped your memory after I killed your first partner.
Bullshit.
The chemist smiled wider.
No, it's the truth, old man. But you've grown irksome over the decades. First taking out my protege Vanessa, and then my lapdog Saul. Yes, your second partner was quite the useful little puppy.
You're lying.
Why would I lie, huh? I want you to know the truth before I put an end to you for good.
The chemist turned and went to a workbench where he stored odd scientific paraphernalia. He took a syringe and walked behind Hank.
But this will make you see, Father.
He injected the syringe into Hank's neck, and Hank's world went dark. Images floated through his mind of his third wife, of her swelling stomach, of a birth and a crib and laughter, of a young boy growing strong, growing fast. And then he remembered. Hank was on patrol and stopped the wrong car full of bank robbers just off a heist. He had taken 6 bullets in the firefight, but had taken each bank robber down in the exchange. Lying in a pool of his own blood, he had made a pact with God to let him live on and see his son grow, and he would hang up his gun forever. But he had passed away, and God had seen fit to burden him with limbo, and the Nameless City was his punishment for a life of sin. Hey guys, sorry I haven't been around much lately. It's just I've been playing this awesome game. It's got an endless amount of content, PvE, PvP, and new characters all the time. Challenging dungeons, terrifying clan boss fights. Yeah, that's what I've been up to. Hey, I've an idea. How about you join me? Use my link in the description to download the game and start with the best setup possible. And most importantly, remember to use my exclusive promo code RAIDPC1 to get a bunch of additional resources. You get 3 times XP brew, 100 energy, and 100,000 silver just for using my code RAIDPC1. Join Raid and millions of players today, y'all. Thanks, Raid Shadow Legends, for sponsoring this program. Hank came to, still strapped to the chair. Staring up into the chemist's face, he found a past image of himself there, for this was the face of his son.
Yes, old man, now do you remember?
Smiled the chemist.
You killed my partner.
Hank remembered now, all of it, good and bad. He had been on patrol with his first partner, and they had been on the chemist's trail for years, but then had been blindsided on patrol, and his son had killed his partner before wiping his memory.
I wanted you to feel the pain that you caused me.
But why?
Because you left us. You left me and Mother. So I took my own life to find you in the afterlife, and now I can do it all again. I'll kill your new partner and wipe your memory, and watch you roam the afterlife like a lost soul.
You don't have to do this, son.
Hank shook his head.
I never left you. I was killed on duty.
It's all the same.
The chemist took another syringe from the workbench.
And now you can watch as your partner dies in pain.
The chemist went to inject a syringe into Creed's neck, but light shone through the warehouse windows.
This is the Nameless City Police Department. Throw down your weapons and come out.
A voice blared through a bullhorn.
Damn it!
The chemist went to a tarpaulin and ripped it off. Underneath was a machine gun like Hank had never seen.
Open the door!
Screamed the chemist. The ghouls darted around and opened the door to the warehouse. Bullets began ringing out, and blood splattered to the ground. 3 ghouls fell. The chemist opened fire then, and the noise was deafening. Bullets ripped into the patrol cars lined outside, and policemen took cover.
Die, you fuckers!
Laughed the chemist. Hank looked across to Creed, who had gotten out of his restraints. He ran across to Hank and undid his bonds.
Let's kill this crazy son of a bitch.
Creed went to grab a gun on a rack nearby. Hank grabbed Creed.
He's my son.
You don't believe that horse shit?
I do.
Creed tried to break his way past Hank, but Hank grabbed Creed by the throat.
I said don't fucking think about it.
Creed punched Hank in the gut, folding him up. Hank watched as Creed went to grab a shotgun from the rack, but the chemist noticed the movement and turned the machine gun. Hank ran as fast as his legs could go and dived through the air, knocking his son away from the machine gun. Creed was closing the distance, so Hank dragged the chemist along the ground into a back room and shut the door, locking it.
Why did you do that?
We only have a little time.
I don't have anything to say to you.
Son, I know I wasn't a good father.
Hank put his hand on the chemist's shoulder.
But know that I loved you in my own way.
What way was that? An empty chair at a birthday? An idea of a man buried and lost forever?
Things aren't fair. Not in life or the afterlife. But we can try. We can try to shore up the past as best we can, with the time we have left.
The chemist had tears in his eyes.
I love you, son.
The door kicked open then, and policemen rushed in.
No!
Shouted Hank. They grabbed the chemist and dragged him out. 2 policemen holding Hank in place so he couldn't see his son.
Is this what you wanted?
Hank heard Creed shout.
Fuck you!
The chemist shouted back. A gunshot rang out, and Hank broke free from the policeman's grip and rushed out. His son lay on the ground. Creed stood before him holding a shotgun. Blood pooled beneath the chemist. They left Hank alone with the son's body at the morgue. Creed was stood nearby.
Why'd you have to do that?
Hank sighed, placing his hand on his son's forehead.
He was a ghoul, Hank. Ghouls can't change their ways. He would have been back on the streets in a few years, and then where would the Nameless City be? In his pocket.
Hank shook his head.
This ain't right.
Creed placed his hand on Hank's shoulder.
I'm sorry, partner. It had to be done.
Hank shrugged off Creed's hand.
You and me, we're through.
Hank turned and stormed away, leaving his only friend left in the underworld behind forever. Back at the precinct, Hank cornered the chief in his office.
You want what?
The chief blanched.
I want a different partner.
Hank folded his arms.
Impossible! You two are the best we've got! Then I'm done.
Hank took his badge and gun and placed them on the table.
I've had enough.
Hank left the station. Back at his apartment, he opened a fresh bottle of whiskey and sat out on the roof, staring out over the Nameless City. After everything he had done, everything he had given for this city, it still had taken the one thing in his life that mattered. Losing his son had broken him on the inside. He washed away his troubles with the bottle and went to bed. Darkness. Hank awoke to a sky with no moon. A day of midnight passed into the next, and Hank watched the patrol cars flashing lights come speeding up to his apartment building. Creed appeared on the roof.
Partner, we need you. I ain't your partner no more.
Tomorrow the fresh meat turns rancid, and nothing will protect the city should that happen, as you know. Hank stared long into Creed's eyes.
I don't care.
Hank drank from the bottle and watched Creed leave. He didn't care about the city's inhabitants. They could eat each other dead for all he cared. That night he dreamt of a light. It emanated around him and seemed to invade his very subconscious mind. He awoke covered in sweat, heart beating wildly. He felt his chest. His heart shouldn't be beating. Wobbling into the bathroom, he stared long into the mirror. His once deformed face had been replaced with a picture of health. He was alive. Hank stumbled out of the apartment building, legs shaking. At the end of the hallway, a ghoul came running at him, fangs flaring. Hank punched the ghoul across the face, drew his revolver, and put one into the fucker's skull. It seemed the fresh meat in the city had turned rancid after all. At the precinct, it was chaos. The windows were boarded up and a crowd of ghouls stood in the cell, snarling at Hank as he passed. He found the chief's lifeless body in his office, gun still in hand. The bullet hole looked self-inflicted, and Hank shut the chief's eyes.
Tell me you had a change of heart.
A voice spoke. Hank turned to see Creed stood in the doorway. Creed flinched. His partner approached him.
Hank, is that you?
Hank felt his face and nodded.
I don't know what happened. You're alive. It would seem so.
Creed shook his head.
This is a dream. First Moon goes missing for 3 nights, and now this. I gotta be dreaming. Ain't no dream, partner.
Hank picked his badge and gun up from the table.
Come on, we've work to do.
Onward they drove through the Nameless City. Crowds of ghouls roamed the streets, and Hank expertly swerved through the throng, crushing one ghoul's fetid skull beneath the car's tires.
Where to, partner? Why, to our good friend Wire. He should have some info about where the hell Moon went.
They came to the warehouse Wire inhabited, and a crowd of ghouls stood just outside. They noticed a patrol car and came moaning forwards, about a score of them, yellow eyes, sharp fangs, drooling green goo. This was what Hank had been fighting against these past centuries, the fresh meat in the Nameless City going wild. Hank let off 3 shots, headshots all, and Creed was right beside him, taking down 6 with his gun. They jumped on top of the patrol car as the ghouls came running at them, and Hank kicked one in the face, knocking it off the car. Hank put a bullet in the next ghoul's skull, and the remaining ghouls seemed to be aware of the dwindling numbers, as the few stragglers left turned and fled down the street, seeing a policeman halfway down, and began chasing him around the corner. Well, there was nothing Hank could do about that. They buzzed the buzzer on the door to the warehouse.
Who is it?
Wire's voice droned through the buzzer.
Who do you think would be batshit crazy enough to be here in this shit mess?
Growled Hank into the buzzer. The door opened and they let themselves in. Wire was wiring another Trillium bomb when they found him.
What can I do for you?
He asked him without looking up.
Need to know where Moon went and who took it.
What's in it for me?
Creed punched Wire in the face.
How about you not being a miserable piece of shit for once, huh?
Creed hissed into Wire's face.
We need those whereabouts, Wire, and all the Trillium bombs you've available.
Hank sat down on the chair and took out the flask of whiskey he'd brought with him, taking a sip. The whiskey burned going down, and how oh so sweet it was being alive.
What happened to you?
Wire asked Hank, taking a closer look at Hank's face.
Guess I'm not dead no more.
Interesting.
Wire turned away.
All right. You guys have me against the ropes. I'll help you out.
Hank slipped the flask back inside his coat and stood.
That wasn't so hard now, was it?
What you guys want the Trillium bombs for anyway?
That's our business.
Creed went into the back room and Hank followed.
Holy shit,
spat Hank, as there on a rack was a fat stack of Trillium bombs, about 20 of them.
You've enough here to blow up the entire Nameless City,
Creed shouted. Wire appeared in the doorway.
Not enough for that, but a good few blocks would be wiped off the map.
Remote detonators,
Hank said.
Got any?
No, remember you guys were meant to get me some.
Wire went to the cabinet and opened it.
You'll have to settle for a trigger.
Hank took a look at the lever and spool of wire.
There ain't enough here.
It's all I have. I was meant to get more, but then, the entire city went to batshit crazy.
smiled Wire. I guess we owe you once more? Creed was slinging the bombs gently into 4 carrier bags.
It's all right. You rid the city of the mutants and we're even.
Well then, let's not sit with our asses in the wind. Let's go, partner.
Where to? Asked Creed once back inside the car.
We've got to take care of these mutant fucks once and for all. We need to draw them to the eastern sector.
What you thinking?
I say we fill up a cargo van with some fresh meat coming off the bone ships, before they have a chance to turn into mutants.
But we'll only have a few hours before they do turn. Hank smiled sideways.
That's all we'll need.
They found the cargo truck and ripped a sheet off the back, exposing the cage on the back of the truck, which was specifically designed for transporting fresh meat from the port. They drove eastwards, coming to the port, and Hank left Creed inside the cab of the truck as he went to speak to a handful of harbingers guarding the gateway to the port.
Fellas?
Hank nodded. The harbingers' long drooping hoods hid their faces, but Hank could tell they seemed to be pissed off about their circumstances. Harbingers were responsible for the well-being of the fresh meat in the Nameless City, more so than the Death Patrol, as they were the interior circle protecting the innocent, even if they were known to feed on the fresh meat. One harbinger seemed to be in charge, so Hank focused on its face, or where its face should have been in the inky blackness beneath the drooping hood.
We need to get inside. We need fresh meat to lure the mutants to the port and file them off on the bone ships. Get them out of the Nameless City.
Hank held no reservations about receiving help from the harbingers, so when the one in charge nodded, it took Hank a moment to realize they agreed to aid him. Hank returned the nod.
Well, we'll just head on inside then.
Hank climbed back inside the truck's cab and drove through the now open gate, the harbingers silently watching them drive by. Inside, they found more harbingers dotted about the port, huddled in groups, seeming to be hissing at one another. Hank ignored them and parked the truck beside a jetty. A white ship was pulling into the bay. They reversed the truck as close to the jetty as possible, and the harbingers aided them in guiding the fresh meat, new inhabitants to the Nameless City, onto the back of the truck. Hank shut the latch and locked it. "What now?" asked Creed.
"Now is the hard part. We need to drive through the Nameless City and attract the attention of the mutants."
Hank jumped in the front, Creed beside him. They pulled out of the port and headed south, getting onto the main avenue of the Nameless City. The mutants were idling about, but as the truck pulled along the avenue, they smelled the fresh meat in the back and began running behind the vehicle. "That's a lot of mutants!" Creed shouted over the thrum of the engine.
"Just means we're in the right place,"
Hank shouted back. They drove further into the Nameless City, coming to the city center. Here the crowds of mutants were thickest, and Hank had to run a few over. They headed north. The mutants running behind them must have been climbing into the hundreds. Headed east now. The port wasn't far away, and the mutants were solely focused on the truck. The harbingers opened the gate as they came chucking along, and Hank guided the mutants towards the waiting bone ships. The mutants didn't seem to even notice the harbingers. They actually seemed to avoid them with a wide berth. Hank waved for the harbingers to come closer as they stopped at the jetties.
"Round 'em up, boys!"
Hank shouted out through the window. The mutants were swarming around the truck, but when the harbingers came closer, they moved on, being ushered into the waiting bone ships.
"What now?"
asked Creed.
"Now comes the fun part."
The metal bars surrounding the bone ships held the mutants in check, and Hank took the trillium bombs out of the back of the cab and went to lay a few on each ship. Spooling the wires back to an empty ship, he nodded to Creed.
"Guess this means we need to take a ship out with them." "Yup. We're gonna blow these sons of bitches to kingdom come."
They climbed onto the white ship, which the harbingers sailed out into the open water. Once sufficiently out in deeper ocean, Hank nodded to Creed. Creed pressed down on the lever, and the bone ships erupted in flames after the Trillium exploded. Hank watched the ships sink below the waves, the mutants sinking with them. Back at the precinct, they watched the policeman carry out the chief's corpse. The streets outside still a mess, but the Nameless City had survived its first moonless day. There was still the mess of burying his son, and Hank and Creed were the only mourners at the graveyard. Hank watched the coffin sink below ground and drop dirt on it, walking away from a part of himself he knew he would never get back. "Where to now, partner?"
Let's grab a drink.
Sitting in Hank's usual bar, they listened to the news on the radio. The city was still without moon, and the fresh meat would only turn once more tomorrow.
Guess we still got a fine moon,
said Creed, lifting the glass to his mouth. Hank nodded and knocked his back, the whole 9 yards.
Should you be drinking, now that you're alive? What's it worth being alive in the Nameless City, partner?
Creed shrugged.
Better than being dead, I suppose. The Harbingers noticed your circumstances, right? I guess they'll take me to the bone ships then.
That's if you want to go, I mean.
Why wouldn't I? A second chance at being alive? Imagine that.
And no one knows what happens on the other side.
Well, I think it's about time I found out.
Hank stood up.
But first, we gotta find Moon. I can't leave the Nameless City like it is.
Creed smiled. One final ride then, huh, partner? Hank nodded.
One final ride.
Onwards they drove through the Nameless City. The fresh meat was being held in warehouses and cages just in case they turned mutant, so the streets were practically empty. A ghost city, twicefold. They drove to Wire's warehouse and buzzed on the buzzer.
You guys really need hobbies.
Wire's voice droned through the speaker. Inside they sat and Wire opened a vintage bottle of whiskey and handed out a few cigars. Hank smiled, lighting up and sipping the whiskey.
So, guess you guys saved the city just in time.
Hank finished his drink and nodded.
Weren't no big deal. Mutants are predictable.
Guess you guys think you're pretty slick, considering.
Hank felt a bit woozy. He glanced across to Creed, whose eyes were closing.
What in the...
Hank put down the drink. The cigar slipped out of his mouth and he drooled.
Guess a ghoul shouldn't be trusted.
Wire stood up, pulling the gun from inside his jacket.
You... fuck.
Hank's world went dark. Hank awoke tied to a chair. Creed was still out for the count. Wire was nearby. The ghoul was dressed in a white lab coat.
What in the underworld are you doing, Wire?
Drawled Hank, still half drowsy from whatever Wire had slipped into their drinks.
You think you're so smart, you Death Patrol detectives,
Wire sneered.
Why are you doing this, huh?
Because I can, Hank. Neither of you even noticed it was me who stole Moon. You were both so bent on finding the chemist, neither of you could see what was right in front of your eyes.
And just the hell are you?
I'm the guy who makes stopping souls, fool. Who do you think makes all the vials for the cleaver?
The penny dropped.
It was you who killed Bella out back of the cleaver.
Very good, Hank.
Creed was coming too, his eyes opened, looking around.
Why?
Because I run the underworld of the Nameless City now, that's why.
Wire took a syringe and went to stick it in the side of Creed's neck.
Wait, how inhospitable of me.
Wire paused.
Who should go first?
What exactly is in it?
Asked Hank, eyeing the syringe.
A formula I cooked up. It'll turn your brains to mush. Then I'll stick your bodies into a vat of acid and make stoppered souls. And it will be interesting, seeing as you're alive. I've never drank a living soul before. Paying folks in the Cleaver will sell their mothers to get their hands on it.
I'll go first, spat Creed.
No,
Hank shook his head.
it should be me. Leave Creed out of it. My soul is worth his alone, ain't it?
Wire nodded.
I guess a bargain is in the making. But I gotta wipe your memory, Creed. Ain't nothing personal.
I'm gonna fucking kill you,
snarled Creed. Wire punched Creed in the face.
I think not.
Leave him be. You want me, not him.
That's right.
Smiled Wire.
I want your soul. Your stoppered soul, at least.
Wire walked over to Hank.
This will hurt. A lot.
Wire went to stick the needle into the side of Hank's neck.
Wait,
shouted Hank, making Wire flinch.
What now?
I guess you don't want to know where it's buried.
Where what's buried?
Why, the stoppered souls.
What are you talking about?
Don't you know?
Smiled Hank. Hank looked at Creed and his partner caught on to the act. Yeah, don't you know anything, Wire?
What are you both talking about?
Every detective in the Death Patrol stashes half of what he finds, nodded Creed.
Stoppered souls, Wire. A shit ton of it.
Hank watched the greed appear in Wire's eyes.
You're both lying.
Maybe. But if you kill me and wipe Creed's memory, you'll never know, will you?
Wire looked from Hank to Creed and back.
Fine.
Wire nodded.
We'll see.
Wire untied Hank's hands. He stuck the barrel of his gun to the back of Hank's head.
If you mess around, I'll kill your partner. Go untie him, and we'll see who's lying.
Hank went and untied Creed.
Well, what you both waiting for? Show me.
They filed out of the warehouse and climbed into the car, Wire sitting in the back with his gun never wavering from aiming at Hank. Hank switched on the ignition.
It's down south in the Black Forest.
Great. I swear, if you guys are shitting me around, I'm gonna kill you both slowly.
With that, they pulled off, heading south, and Hank prayed. They pulled off the freeway and took a dirt road.
It's nearby,
Hank growled, as Wire shoved the gun against the back of his head.
It better be.
Stopping the car near the tree line, Hank switched off the ignition.
Well, partner, guess we best get the shovel out of the trunk.
Hank gave Creed a long look. His partner nodded.
Sure thing.
Creed filed out of the car, Wire in tow, training the pistol on him. Hank got out. Creed opened the trunk and grabbed the shovel inside.
It's just in the trees here.
Hank pointed to a copse of trees to the south.
Your partner's life depends on it.
Wire motioned with the pistol for them to start walking. They walked. The walk of a dead man, perhaps. And now that he faced death once more, a final death, he reflected on his past. Had he been a good man? Good enough for the Nameless City, perhaps, but not in general, no. He had spent almost 3 centuries on the job, and what had he to show for it? A partner who judged him on his drinking, just like the last, and Creed was right. He had been burning the candle at both ends, and now his past was coming back to haunt him. But whatever lay down the road ahead of him, he would not go into that night gently. They left the dirt road and entered the trees, Wire just out of reach of them both and keeping his gun held steady.
It's just over here,
Creed pointed. Wire nodded.
Start digging.
Creed began to dig. Hank watched Wire closely, but the ghoul wasn't leaving any chance of pulling a quick one on him. Hank would give him that.
What you staring at?
Hissed Wire at Hank.
A dead ghoul is what?
I'm the one holding the gun.
Wire shook it to back up his statement. Creed stopped digging.
Why'd you stop? I didn't tell you to stop.
Just staring at the harbingers behind you. Creed smirked. Wire spun around, but too late. The harbingers closed in fast, their hooded robes barely standing out in the pitch-black forest. Wire opened fire, catching one in the face. Creed jumped out of the hole he had been digging and ran at Wire, who heard the footsteps and turned, lifting the gun. The shot ripped through Creed's arm and next through his chest, but Creed brought the edge of the shovel's blade down, impaling it in Wire's skull. Wire dropped to the ground. Hank ran and grabbed Creed, dragging him away from the harbingers who were sucking on Wire's soul before it left the body. He reached the car just in time to shove Creed into the back, and he jumped behind the wheel as the harbingers came screaming at him, hoods thrown back, revealing rotted skulls beneath. Hank switched on the ignition and hit the gas, driving over 3 of them, and he skidded around in a circle, flooring the pedal to the metal, the tires kicking out dirt as he went. Hank checked on Creed, who was out for the count but still breathing. He rushed to the hospital, a strange feature in the land of the dead, but the Nameless City needed one just as the living city did. He parked out front and ran inside.
I need help,
he shouted, and nurses came rushing out, sticking Creed onto a stretcher. We've got it from here, a doctor told him. Hank nodded.
Just take care of him.
Hank sat outside, waiting. 10 minutes passed. 30 minutes passed, stretching on. The doctor reappeared. Good news. You got him here just in time. We managed to stop the bleeding. Hank sighed.
Thank you.
We had to put him under, but you can sit in with him once we've moved him to the ICU. Hank nodded. Creed's eyes opened.
Hank, I'm right here, partner. We got him? We sure did. Damned if I ever let you hold a shovel near me again.
Ha! Ouch! Don't make me laugh, Hank.
Sorry,
smiled Hank. Creed's eyes widened.
We need to release Moon if he already taken care of. Called it in.
Good.
You saved my life.
Hank smiled.
Again.
Ain't that what partners do? Creed smirked.
Guess so. I guess so.
Hank entered the precinct and looked around. The chief was 6 feet deep and they had swapped him for another, but that's how it went in the Nameless City. You what? Said the new chief.
I'm hanging up my hat. The Nameless City needs a new hero. The Untouchables will go on without me.
But you're the best we've got. How about you sleep on it?
Said the chief. Hank shook his head and smiled, then turned and left the precinct, leaving the world of police work behind forever. They sat out on the roof of Hank's apartment building, drinking whiskey and smoking cigars. Didn't think you would ever do it, Creed said, looking at Hank sidelong. The chief is practically shitting himself now trying to find a replacement.
Well, that's what he's for, ain't it?
Said Hank. You sure you want to give it up? You're a death patrol detective, Hank. It's in your blood, in your bones. Hank sipped the whiskey.
Times change, Creed, and we must change with them or be left in the withering past.
That from something?
No. Was just something my second wife always liked to say.
Ha! Creed wiped his eyes and Hank looked away. I guess I'll miss being your partner. Hank smiled and nodded. What will you do now that you got your entire life left to live?
I think it's time to see what's on the other side.
You're selling on the bone ships?
I think so. I feel it's my time. You know?
Creed nodded. Perhaps one day we'll meet again. Hank lifted his glass. Creed refilled both their drinks and lifted his.
To the Nameless City,
Hank said.
A love you can never explain. A place that feels like home. And may you live out your days, Creed, in happiness and good tidings.
Good words, partner. Creed nodded. Good words. Hank stood atop the bone ship. Creed was stood on the jetty. He waved and his partner returned the gesture. Take care of yourself, old man, Creed shouted. And without another word, Hank turned, staring out over the eternal sea, destined to the lands beyond the white light, and whatever that may entail. And that was the Death Patrol End of Watch by our old pal Rory Dwane. A good reminder that even the damned can find redemption. A little about the author. Rory, also known as R.C.J. Dwane, is an author living in the Midlands of Ireland. He is currently writing a young adult novel based on a dream he had titled Delvere, College of Dreams and Magic. You can check out his website at rorydwaneart.wordpress.com, and you can find him on Facebook, YouTube, and Patreon as well. Thanks, Rory.
And do old Drew Blood a favor, would you? Subscribe to his podcast wherever you do your listening and leave him a 5-star review and a kind word, even if you're listening on YouTube. He needs soldiers on all fronts to win this battle, and he appreciates it. To hear a premium ad-free edition of tonight's and all the other episodes, visit simplyscarypodcast.com today and click Patrons in the upper menu. You'll find yourself at chillingtalesfordarknights.com, where you can become a patron for as little as $5 per month and get access to their entire audio archive, all ad-free and available to download or stream. Thank you for your time and for supporting our sponsors. When you support our sponsors, you support this show. If you happen to use Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, or YouTube, you can follow and subscribe to Chillin' Tales for Dark Nights there, where you'll get all the latest updates and new releases and have the chance to interact with them each and every week. Oh, and you can find Drew Blood on Facebook and Instagram, and sometimes Twitter. The Drew Blood's Dark Tales podcast is accepting submissions, friend. If you've got a story or two you'd like to be featured on the show, send it to drewbloodhorror@gmail.com. If selected, you'll get the full treatment, 10 bananas.
Well, I'm afraid this is where we part ways, friend, at least till next week. So may the wind be at your back and may the road rise up to meet you. I'll keep you all posted about the weekend abode. Just pretend I'm doing some renovations over there. Theater of the mind, you know. But in the meantime, go fuck yourselves. See y'all at the premiere of Season 9, friends. And by the way, we got something special for y'all for that first episode, too. So tune in next week because y'all don't want to miss this one. Good night, friends.
Chilling Tales for Dark Nights.